Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Ferris Bueller's Day Off wasn't just a teen comedy about skipping school. It was a production battlefield where friendships shattered, cars refused to start, and a director's vision nearly collapsed under the weight of studio interference. Behind Matthew Broderick's charming smile lurked casting disasters, dangerous parade crashes, and conflicts that would fracture Hollywood relationships forever. From fake Ferraris that terrorized mechanics to parade scenes that hijacked an entire city, this wasn't just another John Hughes romp through suburban Chicago. The cameras captured chaos, the actors battled demons, and the crew watched helplessly as their most expensive prop plummeted to its death. Here are 20 weird facts about Ferris Bueller's Day Off that will change how you see this beloved classic. But stick around for the bonus fact. It involves a secret that even the biggest fans never discovered about what really happened during filming. Ready to discover the truth behind the Day Off? Let's dive in. Anthony Michael Hall was supposed to be Ferris Bueller. Anthony Michael Hall turned down the chance to play Ferris Bueller, which fractured his friendship with director John Hughes. This wasn't just a simple casting decision. Hughes had built his teen movie empire around Hall, crafting The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles, specifically with the young actor in mind. When Hall declined Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was career betrayal in Hughes's eyes. The fallout erupted immediately. Hughes felt abandoned by his muse, while Hall desperately wanted to escape being typecast as the nerdy outsider. Their creative partnership, which had defined the mid-'80s teen movie landscape, collapsed overnight. Hughes never worked with Hall again, and both men carried the weight of that fractured friendship for decades. What audiences didn't know was that every scene Broderick filmed carried the ghost of Hughes's original vision, a darker, more vulnerable Ferris that only Hall could have delivered. The Ferrari broke down every single day. It didn't work right. The scene in which Ferris turns off the car to leave it with the garage attendant had to be shot a dozen times because it would not start. But this wasn't just one problematic scene. The replica Ferrari 250 GT California became the production's most expensive nightmare, breaking down constantly because it was built with a real wheelbase but used a Ford V8 engine instead of a V12. The mechanical disasters weren't scripted comedy, they were daily production hell. Mechanics worked through the night trying to keep the car running while Hughes watched his carefully planned shooting schedule crumble. The cast and crew developed a superstition that the car was cursed, refusing to even sit in it between takes. Every morning brought fresh mechanical failures, dead batteries, transmission problems, engine fires. The garage attendant scenes became legendary among the crew, not for their comedy, but for the sheer number of times they had to be reshot due to automotive rebellion. Matthew Broderick almost walked away from the role. Still, the actor was able to get over his misgivings and accept the role of Ferris Bueller. Broderick's hesitation wasn't about the script or the money, it was about Ferris himself. The character's fourth wall-breaking confidence felt completely alien to the introspective Broadway actor. He worried that playing someone so brazenly charismatic would destroy his serious acting credibility. The breakthrough came during a private meeting with Hughes, where the director revealed the deeper psychology behind Ferris's bravado. Hughes confided that Ferris wasn't actually confident. He was desperately performing confidence to mask his own fears about growing up. This revelation transformed Broderick's understanding of the character, but it also created an internal tension that he carried throughout filming. Every scene became a battle between Broderick's natural introversion and Ferris's manic extroversion, creating the subtle vulnerability that made the performance legendary. The clarinet scene was pure panic. The scene in which Ferris attempts to play the clarinet poorly and then tells the camera, "Never had one lesson," was entirely improvised by Matthew Broderick, but what audiences didn't know was that this moment of comedic genius was born from pure terror. Broderick had completely forgotten his lines during the bedroom scene and was desperately stalling for time while trying to remember the script. The clarinet was a random prop sitting on Ferris's desk, and Broderick grabbed it in desperation, hoping to buy himself a few seconds to recall his dialogue, when he blurted out, "Never had one lesson." It wasn't planned comedy, it was genuine confession. Hughes recognized the magic happening and kept the cameras rolling, capturing one of cinema's most natural fourth wall breaks. The crew watched in stunned silence as Broderick transformed his panic into perfect character work, turning a potential disaster into the film's most quoted moment. Cameron was based on John Hughes' depression. Alan Ruck's haunting portrayal of Cameron Fry wasn't just acting, it was channeling Hughes's own battles with depression and anxiety. The director had spent months in therapy working through his fear of success and his complicated relationship with his own father, and he poured all of that emotional turmoil into Cameron's character. Ruck says that with Cameron Fry, Hughes gave him the best part I ever had in a movie. But the psychological depth came at a cost. Hughes became obsessively involved in Ruck's performance, often pulling the actor aside between takes to share intensely personal stories about his own mental health struggles. The famous pool scene where Cameron stares catatonic into the water wasn't originally scripted. It emerged from an afternoon when Hughes broke down on set, describing his own moments of dissociation and despair. Ruck channeled that raw emotion into a performance that would define his career, but he also absorbed trauma that took years to process. Jennifer Grey hated her own performance. Fresh off her breakout role in Dirty Dancing, Jennifer Grey arrived on set expecting to create another iconic character in Jeannie Bueller. Instead, she found herself trapped in what she considered a thankless, one-dimensional role as the bitter sister. Behind the scenes, Grey constantly clashed with Hughes over Jeannie's motivations, arguing that the character needed more depth and sympathy. The tension erupted during the police station scenes where Grey refused to play Jeannie as purely vindictive. She improvised moments of vulnerability and pain that Hughes ultimately cut from the final film, leaving only the sharp-edged resentment. Grey later described watching the finished film as heartbreaking, feeling that her most nuanced work had been stripped away. The experience soured her relationship with Hughes and contributed to her eventual step back from Hollywood stardom. What audiences saw as a perfectly pitched performance of sibling rivalry was actually the remnants of a much more complex portrayal. The parade scene hijacked an entire city. The filming of the parade scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off in September 1985 transformed Chicago's Von Steuben Day celebration into Hollywood chaos. One of the most iconic moments of Ferris Bueller's Day Off is when Ferris hijacks a float in the Von Steuben Day Parade, but the production's impact went far beyond what viewers saw on screen. The city had no idea what they were agreeing to when they gave Hughes permission to film. Thousands of parade goers found themselves unwitting extras as Broderick's performance electrified the crowd. Real parade participants were shoved aside as camera crews invaded their floats. Traffic controllers lost control of the route as enthusiastic spectators flooded the streets, trying to get closer to the filming. Police received dozens of complaints about the disruption, while local businesses watched their planned parade promotions get overshadowed by Hollywood production trucks. The economic impact lasted for weeks, as tourism to the parade route exploded overnight. The museum scenes created an art crisis. The Art Institute of Chicago became an unwitting battleground during filming as Hughes's crew struggled to capture intimate moments in one of America's most prestigious museums. Museum curators watched in horror as lighting equipment was positioned dangerously close to priceless paintings, while security guards had to constantly intervene to protect artwork from the chaos of film production. The famous scene where Cameron stares at Georges Seurat's A Sunday on La Grande Jatte nearly caused a diplomatic incident. Hughes wanted to film directly in front of the painting, but conservation experts warned that the heat from the lights could damage the delicate pointillist technique. Negotiations stretched for days, with museum board members threatening to shut down production entirely. The compromise required specialized cooling equipment and limited shooting hours, turning what should have been a simple scene into a logistical nightmare that cost the production thousands in overtime fees. Jeffrey Jones nearly got fired mid-production. Principal Rooney actor Jeffrey Jones arrived on set with his own interpretation of the character, a more sympathetic educator, genuinely concerned about student welfare. Hughes had a different vision, a petty tyrant whose obsession with catching Ferris revealed deep psychological problems. The creative clash escalated daily, with Jones refusing to play scenes as broadly as Hughes demanded. The breaking point came during the Bueller house infiltration sequence, where Jones felt the physical comedy crossed the line into cruelty. He walked off set for 2 days, holing up in his hotel room while agents frantically negotiated. Hughes considered recasting entirely, even going so far as to audition replacements. The resolution came when Jones agreed to trust Hughes's vision, but the experience left him bitter about the film's tone. Years later, he would describe the shoot as professionally humiliating, feeling that his dramatic training had been wasted on increasingly ridiculous pratfalls. The economics classroom almost killed Ben Stein's career. Ben Stein's legendary economics lecture, Bueller? Swing was supposed to be a throwaway scene establishing classroom boredom. Instead, it became cultural shorthand for academic monotony and nearly destroyed Stein's reputation as a serious intellectual. The former Nixon speechwriter and Yale law graduate found himself reduced to a comedy catchphrase overnight. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because what happened next reveals how Hollywood can transform respected figures into cartoon characters with a single scene. Stein's academic colleagues were horrified by his association with the film, questioning his intellectual credibility. Speaking engagements dried up as audiences expected comedy rather than serious economic analysis. The scene that made him famous also pigeonholed him permanently, forcing a brilliant policy mind into a career of game show hosting and comedy cameos. It took decades for Stein to reclaim his intellectual reputation, but he never escaped the shadow of that droning Bueller call. The script was written in 6 days. Hughes locked himself away during the 1985 Christmas holiday and emerged with the complete Ferris Bueller screenplay, 116 pages of dialogue, action, and character development created in less than a week. But this wasn't inspired genius, it was manic desperation. Hughes was battling severe anxiety and used the writing process as therapy, pouring his fears about adolescence and mortality into every scene. The speed showed in the production chaos that followed. Plot holes emerged during filming that required constant rewrites, while character motivations shifted daily as Hughes continued processing his own psychological issues. The crew learned to expect completely new dialogue each morning, with entire scenes being scrapped and rebuilt overnight. What appeared to be a tightly crafted comedy was actually controlled improvisation held together by Hughes's ability to find coherence in creative chaos. The 6-day writing marathon became Hollywood legend, but it also established a precedent for rushed production that would plague Hughes's later films. Mia Sara's Sloane was almost completely different. Originally envisioned as a punk rocker with attitude and edge, Sloane Peterson underwent a complete character transformation when Hughes met actress Mia Sara. Her classical beauty and gentle demeanor convinced him to rewrite the girlfriend role entirely, shifting from rebellious outsider to perfect complement to Ferris's energy. But Sara herself preferred the original punk concept and fought to maintain some of that character's independence. The creative tension played out in subtle ways throughout filming, with Sarah injecting small moments of defiance and strength that Hughes often tried to edit out. She refused to play Sloane as merely decorative, insisting on dialogue changes that gave her character agency in the trio's adventures. The result was a performance caught between two different visions, Hughes's idealized girlfriend and Sarah's more complex interpretation. Years later, Sarah would express frustration that her most famous role reduced her to a pretty face when she had fought to create something more substantial. The house interiors were complete recreations. The stunning modernist home where Cameron's family lived wasn't actually a single location. It was an elaborate construction project that consumed a massive portion of the film's budget. The exterior shots were filmed at a real house in Highland Park, Illinois, but the interiors were built from scratch on sound stages to accommodate the complex camera movements Hughes envisioned. Production designer John Corso spent months researching authentic mid-century modern furniture and architecture, purchasing pieces worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to create the perfect backdrop for Cameron's emotional journey. The attention to detail was obsessive. Every book on every shelf was carefully selected to reflect the family's supposed intellectual pretensions, but the artificial environment created unexpected problems. The lighting never felt natural, and actors struggled to connect emotionally with the fake domestic space. The beautiful interiors that audiences admired were actually soulless recreations, which accidentally reinforced Cameron's sense of living in an emotionally sterile family environment. The day off changed Chicago tourism forever. Chicago city officials had no idea they were about to become a major movie destination when they approved filming permits for Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The movie's release created an immediate tourism boom as fans flocked to recreate Ferris, Cameron, and Sloane's adventures. Restaurants featured in the film saw business increase by 300%, while the Art Institute experienced record visitor numbers from people seeking out Cameron's transformative art experience. The economic impact extended far beyond immediate tourism. Real estate values in the filmed neighborhoods skyrocketed as out-of-state buyers sought homes in Ferris Bueller territory. The Willis Tower, formerly Sears Tower, began offering special Ferris Bueller tour packages, complete with references to the film's ledge scene. Local businesses that appeared in background shots found themselves featured in international travel guides. What started as location filming became a permanent economic engine, transforming how Chicago marketed itself to the entertainment industry and tourists worldwide. Matthew Broderick and John Hughes had secret battles. Despite their public collaboration appearing seamless, Broderick and Hughes clashed constantly over the character's interpretation. Matthew Broderick reveals what it was like filming with iconic teen movie director John Hughes, but their conflicts went deeper than creative differences. Hughes's controlling directorial style frustrated Broderick, who was used to collaborative theater environments where actors contributed to character development. The tension peaked during the bedroom scenes, where Hughes insisted on multiple takes to capture every possible emotional variation. Broderick felt micromanaged and creatively stifled, while Hughes worried that the actor wasn't connecting with Ferris's confident persona. Their compromise involved private rehearsal sessions where they worked through character motivations away from the crew's watchful eyes. But the underlying tension never fully resolved, with both men later describing their working relationship as professionally respectful but personally difficult. The chemistry audiences loved was actually the result of two strong creative minds finding common ground despite fundamental disagreements about the filmmaking process. The Ferrari crash was an insurance nightmare. Heritage Auctions is selling the rebuilt 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California prop car used for the crash scene, but what fans don't know is that the famous garage crash nearly shut down production entirely. The insurance companies covering the film went into crisis mode when they realized that car enthusiasts everywhere were inconsolable when that 1961 Ferrari GT skidded off the jack and plummeted to its death. Multiple replica cars had been built for different scenes, but the crash car was the most expensive and detailed version. When it accidentally fell through the garage window, insurance investigators descended on the set, convinced that the crash was real, rather than staged. Production was halted for 3 days while investigators examined every piece of wreckage, interviewed crew members, and reviewed footage to confirm that a $1 million car hadn't actually been destroyed. The delay cost hundreds of thousands in overtime fees and location rental extensions. The insurance crisis became so severe that Lloyd's of London refused to cover any future Hughes productions involving expensive vehicles. The school scenes traumatized real students. Glenbrook North High School became ground zero for production chaos as Hughes's crew transformed the working educational facility into a movie set. Real students found their daily routines completely disrupted as filming equipment blocked hallways and famous actors occupied their classrooms. The administration severely underestimated the production's impact on normal school operations. Classes were relocated constantly to accommodate shooting schedules, while students struggled to focus on learning with camera crews documenting their every move. Many teenagers reported feeling like unwitting extras in their own school lives, unable to act naturally with film equipment surrounding them. Parent complaints flooded the school board as academic schedules fell behind. The principal scenes featuring Jeffrey Jones were particularly disruptive, requiring multiple takes that kept students locked in classrooms for hours past normal dismissal times. The school's agreement to host filming seemed financially beneficial initially, but the educational disruption created lasting negative associations with Hollywood production companies. The twist and shout performance was legally complicated. Ferris puts on a whole performance for the audience, lip-syncing to the Beatles' Twist and Shout and Wayne Newton's Donkey Shown, but securing the music rights became a legal nightmare that nearly prevented the scene from being filmed. The Beatles' catalog was notoriously difficult to license, controlled by multiple parties with conflicting interests and astronomical fee demands. Negotiations stretched for months as lawyers battled over synchronization rights, performance royalties, and international distribution permissions. The Beatles' representatives initially refused to allow their music in any teen comedy, viewing the genre as beneath the band's artistic legacy. Hughes personally flew to London to meet with music executives, screening rough footage to demonstrate how respectfully the song would be used. The breakthrough came when Paul McCartney himself saw the parade footage and approved the licensing, but the fees consumed nearly 10% of the entire production budget. The legal complexity was so extreme that some international releases of the film featured different songs entirely, creating multiple versions of the same iconic scene. Cameron's pool scene almost didn't happen. The haunting sequence where Cameron lies motionless at the bottom of his family's swimming pool wasn't in the original script. It emerged from Alan Ruck's personal struggle with the character's depression. During a particularly difficult day of filming, Ruck confided in Hughes about his own battles with anxiety and asked if Cameron could have a moment of complete emotional breakdown. Hughes initially resisted, worried that the scene would be too dark for a teen comedy, but Ruck's passionate argument about mental health representation convinced him to allow the actor to improvise. The pool scene was filmed in a single continuous take, with Ruck holding his breath underwater while experiencing genuine emotional catharsis. The crew watched in stunned silence as the actor channeled real pain into Cameron's moment of crisis. The scene required extensive post-production work to achieve the right emotional tone, but it became the film's most psychologically complex moment. Critics later cited Cameron's pool breakdown as groundbreaking representation of teen depression in mainstream Hollywood cinema. The end credits scene was studio demanded. The famous post-credit sequence where Ferris addresses the audience directly, "You're still here? It's over. Go home," wasn't Hughes's idea. Studio executives panicked about the film's relatively short runtime, demanded additional content to justify the ticket price. Hughes initially refused, arguing that the story was complete and any addition would damage the film's pacing. The compromise emerged during a heated studio meeting where executives threatened to delay the release unless Hughes provided more content. Rather than shoot new scenes with the full cast, Hughes convinced Matthew Broderick to film the bathroom sequence during a single afternoon session. Broderick improvised most of the dialogue, channeling his frustration with studio interference into Ferris's dismissive attitude toward the audience. The scene became iconic precisely because it captured the actor's genuine annoyance with corporate filmmaking demands. What audiences interpreted as clever comedy was actually Hughes and Broderick's passive-aggressive response to studio meddling, creating one of cinema's most memorable fourth-wall breaks through pure creative rebellion. Bonus fact: according to Tannen, the film, shot for roughly $6 million over 3 months in 1985, was in need of a major re-edit, so writer-director-producer John Hughes swooped in like Batman and saved the day. But what studio executive Ned Tannen didn't reveal was that Hughes's original ending showed Ferris getting caught and facing real consequences for his elaborate deception. The original cut included a devastating final act where Principal Rooney successfully exposes Ferris's lies, leading to his arrest, and Cameron's hospitalization after a complete mental breakdown. Hughes had filmed darker versions of key scenes, including one where Ferris's parents discover his deception and react with genuine disappointment rather than bemused admiration. Test audiences found the ending so depressing that they demanded their money back, forcing Hughes to reshoot the entire final act during expensive pickup sessions that nearly bankrupted the production. The optimistic ending that made the film a classic was actually a last-minute rescue operation cobbled together from alternate takes and hastily filmed replacement scenes. Hughes kept the darker footage locked in his personal vault, creating one of Hollywood's most fascinating what-if scenarios about how a beloved classic could have been a cautionary tragedy instead. Ferris Bueller's Day Off gave us more than just a perfect day in Chicago. It revealed how creative chaos, personal demons, and pure determination can transform production disasters into cinematic gold. Behind every perfect moment lay weeks of struggle, compromise, and artistic battles that pushed everyone involved to their limits. The film that taught us to stop and look around once in a while was itself created by people who couldn't afford to slow down, fighting daily battles against mechanical failures, studio interference, and their own creative demons. Sometimes the most effortless-looking art requires the most exhausting effort behind the scenes. If this deep dive into production's secret surprised you, make sure to like and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes revelations. After all, life moves pretty fast, but movie production moves even faster, and the stories they don't want you to know are always the most fascinating ones. Remember, the day off you see on screen was earned through months of chaos you never imagined.